Very, very soon, we are going to hear from the so-called three amigos, President Biden and his two North American counterparts, the leaders of Mexico and Canada, in this really important summit happening now, focusing on the economy, on immigration, on drugs. The leaders are going to stand side by side. We'll talk about what we expect to hear at a news conference that you will watch live right here in just a couple of minutes. Plus, we are live in California, a state in crisis, with historic rain putting basically the entire state under a flood watch. This storm is turning deadly. We'll show you some of the images we're seeing of rescue crews working around the clock and that search for a missing little boy. We're also doing a deep dive on debt, the new steps by the White House to try to help people out with student loans, with experts telling us we're heading into a credit card crisis. Plus, a really popular hair product designed for black women selling out because white women are buying it up. The conversation it's triggering now about co-opting beauty rituals in tonight's original, and how the Golden Globes are fighting to get your attention back after years of controversy. What we expect to see at tonight's big show later on in this show. Hey, I'm Hallie. It's good to be with you. And listen, at some point this hour, we expect to hear from the so-called three amigos, President Biden, alongside the leaders of Mexico and Canada at a really important summit in Mexico City. This is the shot. It is rather grainy. So it goes when the cell service is questionable with so many world leaders in one place in Mexico City. This is it. They're running behind schedule. But as soon as they walk up to those podiums there, to those lecterns, we will break in and bring it to you live. So let's look at what's at stake, right? Why this matters so much. Let's talk about the key topics of conversation from the perspective of the U.S. You've got the countries looking to boost semiconductor production. If you're like, oh, my God, why? Who, so what, right? This is all about China trade. They want to boost this kind of production so they can stop relying so much on China. They want to look at some new ways to help the environment on the climate crisis. They want to work on immigration, on drug trafficking, and plans for future pandemics also. Take a look. You're about to see the three of them at this so-called family photo. The first time we've seen all three of these leaders together on this trip. And this is a look from a little earlier inside a different meeting. Actually, the meeting we're waiting for them to wrap up now. So they met, they're talking a lot. And after they leave this meeting, they'll come out and they'll tell us what they're talking about. Until now, everything's been one-on-one, like little breakout groups, you could call it. We've seen the president with AMLO, as Mexicans call their president, or today, President Biden with the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. And you heard a real note of optimism here.
I think what we should be doing, and we are doing, is demonstrating the unlimited economic potential that we have when we work together and in the hemisphere, and to help the entire hemisphere.
Monica Alba is traveling with the president in Mexico City. So, Mon, we walked through some of what the key topics, key points are. Do we expect to hear any big breakthroughs coming up in just a couple of minutes when these leaders come out and take questions?
That's the major question here, Hallie, and they just completed sound check behind me, so it does sound like this press conference could be a little closer to getting underway. We understood that as of a couple of minutes ago, this major trilateral meeting was still going on, which, of course, speaks to your major question about all of the topics on this agenda for the three leaders. We saw President Biden meet with his Mexican counterpart a couple times over the last 24 hours. He met with the Canadian Prime Minister, of course, this morning one-on-one, but now all three leaders had an opportunity to come together and really hash out some of these incredibly thorny issues. Last night, there was a more social dinner with spouses. Today was all about getting the delegations together as well and having everybody ranging from commerce to national security. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, is here on this trip. They're just talking about so many different things in a couple of different buckets. First, you have, of course, this major pressing issue of mass migration and border policy. We know absolutely that the president talked about what he saw for himself when he visited the border for the first time since taking office on Sunday in El Paso. We know he thanked the Mexican government for the role they continue to play in these new policies that are a part of an expanded Trump-era policy known as Title 42, which is that public health order that now the president has expanded to include migrants from Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and Venezuela in terms of turning them away at the border back to this country, to Mexico. So they really need the help of Mexican officials. There's a possibility, there was an indication, maybe more countries could be added to that list, maybe more than the 30,000 migrants a month that are going to be turned back to Mexico. That could expand as well. So there are a lot of questions about whether there were more agreements hashed out on that end, or whether the Mexican president provided any kind of assurances that that's something they would be willing to entertain. So that is one thing. And then, of course, there's the major economic area. When we talk about some trade disputes, Canada and Mexico would both like the U.S. to do more in terms of, they say, a North American trade cooperation as opposed to doing some trade with China. Instead, Canada and Mexico, both leaders have said they would like to see more of that, because all combined, they really are one of the biggest trading blocs in the entire world. In addition to that, they talked about climate change. They talked more about energy. So the list is very, very long. And again, the length of this meeting indicates there was no shortage of conversation. In terms of major deliverables, we have a list of some things that seem like promises, some initiatives, but no absolute major concrete agreements. Whether they come out and talk more about that when the leaders actually give their statements here in a couple of minutes, that we'll have to wait and see for, Hallie.
Mon, thank you very much. Hey, Mon, real quick, and I know you're really far away from your camera because there's a million people there and you're trying to get a question, et cetera. Give us the vibe check, because the tee up to this, and I spoke with a top White House official about this, was the idea that, like, maybe this post-Trump honeymoon was ending. Kind of a good vibes only situation so far, though, yeah?
Absolutely. And in 2021, when these three leaders came together, as it's known, los three amigos, los tres amigos, however you want to say, the three of them, when they're together, it is typically, or has been historically, friendly. And that's all 2021 was about: repairing, restoring relationships on the world stage after the hiatus of the Trump administration. But here, actually, we have seen a slight shift at times. The Mexican president yesterday actually did have one more tense exchange with President Biden, telling him, using words like disdain and abandonment for describing how he felt the U.S. has treated Latin America. President Biden immediately defended that point and said, actually, nobody has provided more foreign aid to this part of the world than anywhere else, and that, of course, he can't just focus on one part of the globe. He would love to do that, but he has a lot of different interests everywhere, and that, of course, Latin America does continue to be a priority. So we did see a little bit of tension there, but then again, these two leaders have now committed to working on a lot of issues. The big thing also, Hallie, fentanyl, drug trafficking, that's something that a lot of experts wanted to see concrete steps come out of this. So that's a major question as well, on top of the billion potential questions we have about the other major story, which is these classified documents that were found in a private office that President Biden were related to his time as vice president. So plenty to ask. You've been in these shoes. You know how it goes. We'll see if we can get a bunch of questions to the president. But right now they're saying it may just be one from each country. But we'll see. We'll do our best.
As they say, more TK, more to come. Monica Albert, thanks, Mon. We'll see you a little bit later on in the show. We'll talk about some of those other stories coming up in just a second, but we've got to get to our other big story tonight back here at home, and that is California in crisis mode because of dangerous and deadly storms. At least 14 people have died, and right now the search is on for a 5-year-old boy who is missing, swept away in the historic rain in California that's triggering these massive floods, evacuations, thousands of people without power. And guess what? It's not like relief is on the way. Far from it. Right now, 21 million people are under flood watches. And to put that in perspective, that's like half of people in the state, down from 80% earlier. And look at what's happening, right? The highway in Santa Barbara here that you're seeing, cars can barely move, flashers on. One guy resorted to using a paddleboard just to be able to get down the road. And in Montecito, a town where a lot of celebrities live, the entire city is under evacuation orders. This is Ellen DeGeneres sharing this video as water came rushing down something that was only a creek. Now it looks a little bit bigger than that. You've got rescues in place all across the state. Crews here are pulling 2 people out of a car that was swallowed by a sinkhole. It is absolutely incredible to see some of these images. We're going to have Bill Cairns give us an update on the forecast. But first, let's get to Marissa Parra, who is live for us in your Santa Cruz. And Marissa, the story of that little boy who is missing is gut-wrenching for so many people, not just in the state, but around the country, showing just how powerful these storms are and how dangerous.
Absolutely. And let that be a testament to, again, how powerful these floodwaters can be and how deceiving they can be. And in terms of how the rest of the state is doing, I mean, you said it yourself, this is far from over. But the sights, the images are just hard to shake. And even in what seems like the aftermath, again, this isn't over, but you have sights like this. I mean, this is pretty normal around here. You see just giant chunks of trees, if not full trees, in the middle of a parking lot. And then you have people who are walking through waters like this. This is a street And people have been walking through it on their way to the market, which just opened for the first time in a couple of days. This is the quote-unquote normal for the week for people who live around here. This is just south of Santa Cruz. So in terms of how this area is doing, how the people are doing, it's kind of a mix between despair and acceptance. And I think it depends on the type of person, one, but two, how much damage you yourself are seeing. So we're going to try to move over. Again, a lot of traffic as people are getting out and about. We've seen kids on their bikes they're getting out for the first time. In fact, the family that lives above this market, Hallie, they were telling us that they had been trapped there when these waters were a lot higher. These waters have receded since we've been here even. They had been there since this storm started. So we saw them as they came down, getting some sunlight for the first time. I mean, I will say it is a bit of a reprieve for this specific area, but it really just depends on where you are, too, and how much damage your specific place has received. So, Hallie, I think the state of California right now just bracing itself for what comes next.
And you've been talking to a lot of people about this, right? About how they're dealing with this, what it's like, what life is like right now in a state that, Marissa, you said it to me 24 hours ago, and I've been telling even my friends about it. California cannot catch a break. That's how you phrased it, and that's the reality for people there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had one guy around here that we just spoke to not that long ago that was telling us that this, while it's not that uncommon, California is wavering between wildfires and landslides and flooding, it still captures attention every time. He told us about his commute just trying to get to work the other day. Take a listen.
A lot of slides, yeah, trees. Fortunately, not too many car wrecks, because that can be a big problem. But yeah, the slide last night was huge. I say we got stopped by that, and it was a couple 100 feet high.
Yeah, so, Hallie, I think that this is just a testament to what it's like living in California. You know, the way that he said it, it was almost so casual, but still processing everything that he's seen, not just in the last 24 hours, but the last week, and if not the last few years.
Marissa Parr, glad to have you with us there live from Northern California. Thank you. I want to bring in Bill Cairns now, of course, our meteorologist. So, Bill, it's not like tomorrow things get better. It's not like Thursday things get better. They're looking to the end of the week before the situation starts to improve.
The sunshine's great, though. I mean, we'll take that, right? That was nice to see behind her in the background. So that was good. Today has been scattered rain. It hasn't been downpours in all areas, so that's good. And I just want to show you some of these rainfall totals since the first of the year. I mean, it's just been a wild week and a half. 20 inches in some of the central coastal areas, up to 24 inches north of San Francisco. Even the mountains north of L.A. picked up to 15 inches. Specific cities, L.A., 4 inches. Sacramento, only around 2 or 3. We didn't have a lot of bad flooding around Sacramento, thankfully, but up around 8. And these all totals, these are about double what we should have for the seasonal average, not just for the first 10 days of January. And in the snowpack, and this is key, we're up about 200% of where we should be. Most areas have already surpassed the amount of snow they had all last winter, and that is fantastic. So what's next? Today we watched rain and storms. There's still some out there, but we're going to get a break for much of tonight. Tomorrow another storm comes in, but here's the difference with this one, Hallie. This storm is going to hit more northern California, from the Bay Area northwards. L.A., you get a break, you're fine. Flood watches drop. Santa Barbara, you get your break too. This is tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, right about this time. All of the heavy rain is San Francisco northwards, and this is the area that wasn't hit yesterday. So this area can probably absorb a little more. We're going to have issues. We're going to have some more burn scar flooding. We're going to have some debris flows and maybe some landslides, but it will be in a different portion of the state. Thursday is a break, and it looks like much of Friday is a break too. So we're not going to see anything as bad as yesterday, Hallie. It looks like Saturday is the next day that another powerful storm will come in to to areas of central California.
What is part of the irony here, the horrific irony here, is that, and having been a California native for a little bit, you know, earlier in my career, like, it's the lack of rain that's always a problem, you know, and it's the extreme drought that has been the predominant weather disaster in the state of California for many, many years. That's the thing that's been so problematic.
And what's going to be interesting is that if we have a dry spring and then we have a dry summer, the wildfire season could actually be worse when we get to the fall, because now we have all of this rainfall, so all the vegetation is going to grow like crazy, and then if it dies over the summer, we may actually have a worse wildfire season because of the rain. So that's how California works. I mean, you have mountains, you have deserts, you're right near the ocean. That's why, you know, they can get some crazy swings of weather. And the one thing, Hallie, is capturing all the water. So the reservoirs, they've been trying to capture every drip they can from all of these rivers rivers to build up the reservoir supply. And the one positive out of this is if you add up the water that's contained now in the mountains in the form of snow and the water they've captured in the reservoirs, Hallie, we are now where we should be on average. We have made up a huge gain.
Bill Cairns, our meteorologist, covering this critically important story. Bill, I am sure we'll be talking again later on in the week. I know it. Thank you very much. Let's talk about what's happening tonight as it relates to these documents from President Biden found in one of his private offices. Top Senate Intelligence Committee Chairman Mark Warner, a Democrat, wants his committee to be briefed on what was found at a D.C. office linked to the president, with sources familiar with the matter late tonight telling NBC News more about the specifics here, the number. We're talking about fewer than a dozen documents, okay? This is not a criminal investigation at this point. The DOJ is looking into it. The White House is cooperating with both the Department of Justice and the National Archives. But now you have several House Republicans and former President Trump who want an investigation into how these documents got into this office, why they didn't get turned over to the archives as they were supposed to. And this request now for a national security damage assessment. That's basically something that says, hey, here's how problematic it is that these documents are out there. What you're looking at here is a comparison that some on the right have drawn to how former President Trump was treated when more than 300 classified documents were found at his home of Mar-a-Lago. Let me bring in now Ken Delaney. A lot of updates on this late tonight, Ken. And let's start with, we're going to get to this comparison that's being made and sort of reality check on that. But let's start with the new reporting here, because you and our team are saying we're talking about fewer than a dozen documents. We don't know much more about them. That's right. We brought viewers this, by the way, as breaking news 24 hours ago here on this show, so I think people are somewhat familiar. It wasn't fewer than a dozen documents. Concerns now, though, about what happens moving forward.
Yeah, that's right. So Merrick Garland has asked the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, a Trump appointee, to review the question of whether there needs to be a criminal investigation. Now, a mistake isn't a crime. So if this was just an inadvertent, accidental breach
Papers got
here,
shuffled in, they get taken over, they find him, they say, here you go.
Then it's very likely there will not be a criminal investigation. Nonetheless, there are some important questions the White House is not answering. What kind of documents are we talking about? How did they get here? Was President Biden involved in requesting them? And then why did they sit on this information for so long? Why didn't they disclose 6 days before the midterm or even somewhat after that this had happened? In the context of this investigation into Trump, it seems relevant.
You're bringing up something important, though, right? This comparison with former President Trump and the documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago, because in that instance, there was a request made to hand over documents that was not complied with.
Yeah, it's a night and day difference.
Explain that.
Right, because if Donald Trump had just simply handed over the documents when the archives first requested them, we wouldn't even be hearing about it, probably. I mean, it would have been a nothing burger. But he resisted to the point where there was a grand jury subpoena demanding all the classified documents. They were not turned over. The Justice Department got a search warrant, and the whole saga. And you know, Trump has sort of tried to claim he declassified the documents. He's sort of acknowledging he had these documents. He's claiming they were his. Biden is
his lawyers haven't argued that.
That's right. His lawyers haven't argued that. Now, Biden hasn't said anything about this, but the White House is essentially saying this was a mistake. And as soon as we learned about it, we turned the documents over. And, you know, that happens. It's probably more common than we think in the government, you know, where documents go places they shouldn't go. And generally, they don't become a big deal.
But the reason why this is a big deal, the reason why, meaning for some Republicans, and the reason why there's so much scrutiny on this is because of the Trump factor, right? It's because of the documents and the documents, you know, potential legal implications that former President Trump has for what he has on his property.
When you're running an administration that's investigating your political opponent for mishandling classified documents, and then it turns out somebody in your orbit mishandled classified documents, you should be transparent about that. You should at least tell the public what happened and explain all the circumstances, not hide behind, oh, the Justice Department is looking into it.
But part of this, and again, we laid it out. We just had a graphic on screen of the differences, right? The distinctions between these two cases, even just the numbers, as we can now report here at NBC News. Vastly, vastly different, just different scale, different scope. This is also part of the reason why we're so interested to hear from President Biden at this news conference in Mexico City coming up. We think in a couple of minutes we're going to be carrying it here live because he hasn't said anything about this. That's
right. And what's interesting, we know that Biden generally took his intelligence briefings on an iPad. So in my own mind, as a person who covered the intelligence community a long time, I'm wondering why there were paper documents that were classified in his possession in this office at this think tank where when he had long ago left the vice presidency. Was it just a simple matter of somebody made a mistake packing them up during the transition? Did he request them for a book? There's all these kinds of questions that the White House really should answer.
Ken Delaney, thank you very much. Glad you're with us. I'm sure there's more to come on this one, too. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Hallie.
Former Trump Organization Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg is headed to Rikers Island Jail tonight after a New York City judge sentenced him to 5 months in prison for his role in the company's 15-year tax fraud scheme. Weisselberg pleaded guilty to multiple tax fraud charges last summer after he basically didn't pay taxes on a bunch of stuff he got while working for the organization. Benefits like an apartment rent-free, expensive cars, private school tuition. But here's what Weisselberg did. Okay, he flipped, essentially, to testify against the Trump Organization at trial in return for not as much time behind bars. Joining me now is Tom Winter. And, Tom, the sentence is kind of what we expected here. The assistant district attorney says Weisselberg paid back something like $2 million in taxes and penalties. Explain the significance of this, because, listen, he's probably going to end up serving 100 days in prison, roughly, in jail, rather, if you think about good behavior, et cetera, et cetera. Like, Rikers, 100 days is still 100 days.
It is, and it's for somebody who's over 75 years old. 100 days in jail are a lot of days in jail, prosecutors point out, as well as his own defense attorneys. It is, Hallie, as you suggested, kind of what we thought was going to happen here, because unlike federal court, where prosecutors say, okay, somebody's pleaded guilty, they've been cooperative, how cooperative have they been? Judge, here's kind of the guideline range, basically the two guardrails on either side of the road that you should sentence this person to. It's different in the state system in that at the time of his guilty plea, effectively the judge said then, well, all right, prosecutors are suggesting 6 months. I'm going to go with 5 because you're a former U.S. military vet. On top of that, you taught in school, so I'm going to hold it to 5, and that's where it's going to be. Today, he said, look, if I wasn't somebody who was going to keep my promises, I would sentence you to more, because he said he found it, in his words, quote, offensive that Weisselberg arranged for a payment to his wife so that she could receive Social Security benefits, having done effectively no work for the company. He says at a time when so many Americans are working so hard to eventually be able to get these Social Security benefits through their work day in and day out through their jobs, he thought it was offensive that she was getting this payment. He said it was motivated by greed in a case where he says the entirety of it was motivated by greed to get these untaxed benefits. He was handcuffed with his right hand first, then his left. As you saw from the video there, Hallie, at the just a few seconds ago, he came to court dressed casually. His attorneys effectively apologized to the judge, saying, you know, he doesn't mean to disrespect the court, but he knows that he's going to jail today. He is currently in the Department of Corrections system. My colleague Chloe Atkins points out, but we don't know yet that he's officially at Rikers Island. It's about 45 minutes from here, 8.1 miles driven by car. So Alan Weisselberg, now former Trump CFO, kind of the right-hand man of the former president, now somebody who's in the custody of the state of New York. Hallie.
Tom Winter, thank you very much for that reporting. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, we are still waiting to hear from President Biden, along with the presidents of Mexico and Canada in Mexico City. You see that live shot there. We expect it to get pretty busy in just a couple of minutes. We'll bring it to you right here. Plus, our Capitol Hill team just caught up with new House Speaker Kevin McCarthy about how he plans to handle the whole thing with Congressman George Santos. When I say the whole thing, I mean the whole thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Plus, Coachella finally announcing its lineup. We'll tell you who it is, who's going to be there later on. Just within the last couple of minutes here in Washington, our Capitol Hill team caught up with new House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who really wouldn't get into how he plans to handle the situation with Congressman George Santos. Listen.
Have you made any decision as to how you're going to handle George Santos in his time?
No, but I'll tell you when we do.
It comes as a couple of Democratic lawmakers from New York are today asking the House Ethics Committee to look into whether Santos broke the law when he filed his financial disclosures late and without some key details about his money. Remember, this is a member of Congress, George Santos, who was found acknowledged, by the way, he acknowledged not having told the truth about stuff like where he went to school, who he worked for, etc. Ryan Nobles is joining us now. And you know, these two members of Congress, Ryan, hand-delivered this complaint to George Santos's office, surrounded by media. I'm not necessarily surprised to see Speaker McCarthy not engaging with you on this, because this is a thorny issue for Republican leadership. What's your sense of it?
Yeah, and you know, Hallie, it's really important to point out that any work that could be done by the Office of Congressional Ethics, the House Ethics Committee, those are two different things, and state and local prosecutors who have said they're going to look into this situation with George Santos, you know, any kind of decision on that would be well down the road. This would require an investigation. It would have to determine whether or not there was actual fraud that took place here before there could be any type of adjudication. The only person right now that has any power to do anything in the immediacy as it relates to George Santos is Kevin McCarthy. And that's why it was so important for us to catch up with him and press him about what Republican leaders plan to do with this situation with George Santos. The most obvious being that they could prevent him from sitting on any committees. That's something that Kevin McCarthy can do all on his own as the leader of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. They could just block Santos from serving on any committees, which would effectively, take away a lot of the power that he would have as a member of Congress. And it would also allow Kevin McCarthy to still have his vote on the House floor, given the fact that he only has a 4-seat majority. Now, at this point, McCarthy just won't engage as to what his plans are about George Santos. Earlier today, Steve Scalise, who's the majority leader, number 2 in command with the Republicans in the House of Representatives, described it as an internal matter, acknowledged that it was a problem and that they had to figure out what they were going to do. But at this point, Hallie, this is just something that Republican leaders in the House do not seem to want to touch with a 10-foot pole.
But neither does George Santos. You know what I mean? I know our team caught up with him today, who was like, he says he's done nothing unethical and basically said he's not going to talk until it's on his own timeline soon. And the question was like, well, what does soon mean? When is he going to address this now as these investigations continue to pile up? At some point, Ryan, put on your political analyst hat here, like, doesn't he kind of have to say something about all of this now that he is a sworn-in member of Congress and these questions are continuing to swirl?
Well, unless he wants his life to be miserable up here, Hallie, I mean, we're not going to let it go. And so every single day.
Right, reporters can walk the halls and ask him every day what is up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And it's not just our news organization. It's all these news organizations. We're looking for answers as it relates to this, sketchy background and his, questionable claims about where he came from and where all the money came from. I think that's perhaps the biggest problem that he's facing right now is how he went from being someone who was only making $50,000 a year to making millions and then donating $700,000 to his campaign. He's going to have to talk about it at some point. He told us today he'll do it on his time until he's ready. We're just going to keep asking those questions, Hallie.
You make an important point, Ryan, that perhaps his biggest potential liability now is less about the embellishments, the things he said that weren't true during the campaign, and more about the money piece of it, because there are things that members of Congress sort of have to do and have to abide by, like the law, et cetera. We'll see. Ryan Nobles, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, as we talk about what's going on Capitol Hill, let's talk about how lawmakers in both the House and Senate have now officially been sworn in, including 82 new faces. And this new Congress is making history for a lot of reasons, but also for being one of the most diverse in history. People of different ages, races, genders. You want to know more about it? You want to know how they got there? Here's the breakdown. 10 days into the new year, 15 votes for House Speaker later.
Congratulations.
And finally, a new crop of congressmen and congresswomen are at work today. 149 women, to be exact, serving in the 118th Congress, including incumbents and newly elected leaders. That's a record. It means a third of all lawmakers on the Hill are women, 23 of whom are in office for the first time.
A better world is possible.
Take Summer Lee making history as the first black woman to represent the state of Pennsylvania, or Republican Lori Chavez DeReamer and Democrat Andrea Salinas, the first Latinas representing Oregon. There's diversity among the newly elected men, too. Democrat Shri Tanadar is Michigan's first Indian-American congressman, and with notable LGBTQ plus members in the freshman class, those include Democrat Robert Garcia of California, the first openly gay immigrant member of Congress, and Democrat Becca Balint, the first openly gay member of Congress from Vermont. The average age of newly elected House members is 46. The youngest, Maxwell Alejandro Frost of Florida.
We have a lot of work to do.
He's the first Gen Z member to join Congress at 25 years old. On some level, this makes some sense. The U.S. is getting more diverse, after all. Between 2010 and 2020, the multiracial population jumped 276%. But there could be some other factors at play here, like redistricting that added 20 new representatives to the House after the 2020 census. Plus, 55 incumbents decided not to run for re-election.
And while we sometimes think of Congress members as staying in the office for decades at a time, the reality is most seats have a 12-year turnover rate, which leaves room for newcomers fairly consistently.
Another notable first in the Senate. Republican Markwayne Mullin is the first Native American senator in almost 2 decades. He's a member of the Cherokee Nation. But keep in mind that since Kamala Harris became vice president, there are no black women in the Senate. Speaking of things on Capitol Hill, by the way, you know, some of those images we've been looking at over the course of the last week and a half or so, those are thanks to C-SPAN cameras. There's now tonight been a new amendment introduced by Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz to try to get C-SPAN cameras in more key moments to bring it to you. Access all of it. Let's see what happens. And let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, China starting to retaliate, as promised, against countries that are making travelers from China test negative from COVID before they can arrive home. Beijing says it's not going to issue short-term visas to people from South Korea and Japan. Those countries, along with the U.S. and others, say they're worried about how much COVID there is right now in China. China says it's all politics and that they're being discriminated against. Number 2, California Democratic Congresswoman Katie Porter is getting a little bit of flack from some of her fellow Californians for announcing she's running for Senate in 2024. Why? Well, partly because of the timing of her announcement as the state is dealing with those historic storms, and because neither of the state's 2 senators have said they're actually going to leave their jobs yet. It's not clear whether 89-year-old Senator Dianne Feinstein from California will retire next year. She's telling NBC News Today, her office, that everybody is welcome to throw their hat in the ring. Number 3, 2 brothers from Dallas say at least 1,000 names on the new Korean War Memorial in D.C. are spelled wrong. They also say 500 names are missing. They've spent decades documenting the Korean War and say they sent their list of names to government officials. The Department of Defense says the errors are a very unfortunate mistake. They're working to fix it. Number 4, Disney CEO Bob Iger wants hybrid employees to be hybrid no longer. He wants them back in the office at least 4 days a week, starting in March. I guess that's still semi-hybrid, but like 4-to-1, different ratio. This is all according to an email that CNBC got its hands on. That's a fairly strict requirement when you compare it to what other big companies are doing, which is mostly like 2 or 3 days mandated in the office. We'll see how it goes for Disney. Number 5, Coachella is just out with its lineup, and it's got people feeling all kinds of ways. Bad Bunny, Blackpink, Frank Ocean, the headliners. You've also got Bjork, Rosalia, Gorillaz there. Coachella obviously big in the desert. 2 weekends in April, Palm Springs. See you there when we come back. The Biden administration is proposing a new plan for how people pay back their student loans, and it could cut some payments in half, right? Interesting stuff. We're getting into the details. Plus, another kind of debt is building, with more of us leaning on our credit cards in this country. What that means for the economy, next. Officials in New Mexico say they have somebody in custody after a string of shootings targeting Democratic leaders. We've got more on that story coming up later in the local. But first, the Biden administration is moving forward on a proposed new plan to try to lower student loan debt payments for millions of people. They're calling it a student loan safety net. And what this is about, it's like a payment plan that's driven by how much you make. It would mean monthly payments would be lower. You might have an easier path to forgiveness. It also means that interest that isn't paid would not get added onto your balance. Some education experts say this is a powerful tool that could help make college more affordable. But critics say it basically turns student loans into grants that don't need to be repaid. Mike Memoli is joining us now. And Mem, I think there's a lot of people who are really interested in this, and it's worth noting this is separate from a different student loan debt plan that the Biden administration has tied up in court right now. Break down what this would do and how it goes from, like, idea to reality.
So, Hallie, we're in what they call in the bureaucratic world the rulemaking process. And so let's put it into plain English. The Department of Education has sort of rewritten the protocols around what's called the repay program. It's an income-based repayment plan that essentially says you only have to pay a percentage of your discretionary income of the student loan debt overall. And then, obviously, as you earn more, you pay more. And what the Department of Education is now saying is that rather than 10% of your discretionary income, you only have to pay 5%. Now, this formula also includes factors like your family size, if you have children, and that obviously is the larger point here is that after 20 years, whatever the balance that remains on your student loan debt is forgiven completely. So this is another form of forgiveness that is going to mean a lot to a lot of people. And it doesn't take effect now, as this rulemaking process is underway, until July of 2024. But the White House says that for a typical a four-year undergrad graduate of a public university, you're going to save about $2,000 a year. And so this has been, as we know, a real focus of the White House and something that is going to mean even more for those who potentially qualify here.
There's also more accountability for places where students end up not being able to afford their loans, right? Putting students in that kind of situation.
Yeah, it's interesting because this is part of a larger student loan overhaul that the White House announced with that loan forgiveness plan that is now tied up in the Supreme Court, right? They wanted to say, and they're saying to some institutions of higher education, that you have to prove that there's value in the degree that you're offering here, that if people are going to spend a lot of money and borrow government money to help pay for it, you have to have a stricter accountability here to show that the degree is providing value. And the way that the Department of Education potentially enforces this is by withholding additional revenue streams that come from the federal government to these higher education institutions. Because let's step back here, right? We know that the cost of higher education is way too high, and this is a part of an effort by the White House to try to begin to curb the university portion of it rather than just the student portion of it as well.
Mike Memoli, thank you very much for that, ma'am. Appreciate it. It's not just college. You've got inflation driving up the cost of just about everything. So more people are leaning on credit cards, we're finding out, to try to make ends meet. Look at where credit card balances are in this country, up 15% from last year. And people aren't just building debt, they're carrying it. About half of us are not paying off our full credit card bills every month. That is higher than it used to be just from last year. On top of taking on debt, Americans are not saving as much money. The personal savings rate is near an all-time low, just 2.4%. Brian Chung joins us now. And Brian, perhaps it is somewhat inevitable, or at least unsurprising, that in this economic climate where things just cost more, people are charging it more and saving less, right? Talk about the significance behind these numbers, which I think do tell a story of the American economy right now.
Yeah, and here's another statistic that adds to that story, the fact that credit card interest rates, the average interest rate is 19.6%. That's a record, by the way. It keeps breaking records, which means the cost of not paying your bill for your credit card is going to get that much more painful. And this kind of falls in line with the overall story here, which is that a lot of Americans who had a lot of stimulus during the pandemic are burning through that stimulus as they continue to put everything on the plastic. And even with the holiday spending, you have to remember we just cleared a very hot season for spending on your credit cards. That turns into a very precarious position where if you're not able to pay those bills, there's going to be a sharp penalty for that as well. Interesting to see whether or not this changes consumption behavior later on this year.
It also raises some questions about where is the cushion for American families if, in fact, we do get into a recession or deeper into a recession this year.
Yeah, and the cushion is just really unclear right now. I mean, there's this kind of weird situation with this economy where at least people have jobs, and you hope that the income coming in from those jobs will be able to pad the impact of these rising debt costs and also just the broader challenges with inflation. But does that change? Federal Reserve, the steward of the economy, is projecting that the unemployment rate could rise from 3.5% as of the last read to 4.6%. That doesn't sound like a lot, but that would be over 1.5 million Americans thrown out of work. That would be the cohort that would really have issues with all these other economic narratives that we're also watching. So something that kind of underscores just how uncertain 2023 looks.
Brian Chung, thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Coming up here on the show, some controversy online over a certain popular hair product. We're explaining it in our original tonight. Plus, what's Ben Affleck doing at Dunkin'? What's Ben Affleck doing at the drive-thru? Handing me my coffee. More on that in the local. To tonight's original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And right now, it's this new viral social media trend surrounding this very popular beauty product that's kicking off a new conversation around race. Miel's hair oil is meant to make hair thicker, make it grow more. It's designed specifically for Black women and women with thicker, curlier hair. But recently, popular white influencer Alex Earle posted about how well it's working for her, and some people think that is why the product is selling out, empty shelves in stores. There's a concern now about whether this product is going to change to accommodate a new demographic. Zincle Asamoah has the story.
A popular hair product used by Black women, Maelle rosemary oil, is now viral on TikTok.
I've only been using this for like a little over a month and I've already seen tremendous hair growth.
But its newfound popularity is drawing criticism from customers.
Why are you worried about this rosemary hair oil being marketed potentially to a broader audience?
There really just aren't that many options for natural hair.
The video, now with over 500,000 views, was shared by influencer Alex Earl and praises Maelle rosemary oil. The company's website indicates the product can be used on protective styles, including braids and weaves, common for Black and textured hair. Ranelle Chella says she's used the product for years, but recently...
I was like, okay, it's sold out. Maybe it's just like a today thing. And then I tried to go to Target and it wasn't there either. And I looked online and it said it was sold out at every single one.
The 23-year-old worries the product's new virality will make it harder to access.
I've had to drive 45 minutes to an hour to access Black hair care products, and that even results in me having to cross state lines.
Some Twitter users likening the Maelle debate to a controversial 2017 Shea Moisture ad.
I didn't feel like I was supposed to be a redhead.
The hair and skincare company accused by some social media users of whitewashing its products. In a statement, Shea said, "We don't have to change our award-winning formulations to appeal to someone they weren't made for. We simply innovate new products to solve the needs our community identifies."
Is this another Shea Moisture debacle?
I look at them separately.
Jessica Krull is the editor-in-chief of women's beauty magazine Allure.
I understand the hurt, but I also think that at the end of the day, we should want to see Black entrepreneurs succeed.
NBC reached out to Maelle for comment, but has not heard back. The company's founder, Monique Rodriguez, saying in an Instagram post in part, quote, "We remain forever committed to developing quality, efficacious products that address the need states for our customers' hair types."
I'm not denying that this is an opportunity for the company to grow. I don't think that the concerns of Black women are unfounded because it's happened in the past.
Customers hoping their beloved product will stay the same, even through the growth.
Zincle is joining us now. And Zincle, when you look at this, right, it's a controversy that's created this conversation about the idea of gentrification of certain beauty rituals, which is not something that I think people think about when they think of like the gentrifying of things.
Absolutely, Hallie. I mean, Jessica Krull, that beauty expert I spoke with, made the important point that hair oil itself is often used in many Southeast Asian communities as a deep conditioning practice. So a concern is co-opting or gentrifying, as you're talking about, because today many cultures talk about discovering these oils or renaming these practices to like hair slugging. We see that trending on TikTok. And that can be problematic when consumers don't credit the diverse cultures these rituals originate from. So definitely a nuanced conversation, but one thing is certain, Maelle has everyone talking and oiling, Hallie. So
everybody doing both of those things for sure.
Yes.
Zincle Asamoah, thank you. That's a great piece. Really glad you brought it to us tonight. I appreciate it. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day. And because you couldn't possibly read or watch or listen to them all, our bureau teams have done it for you. This is what they tell us is going down in their regions in a segment we call The Local. From our Western Bureau, New Mexico officials say they finally have somebody in custody after a string of 6 shootings targeting Democratic lawmakers. A half dozen of them have reported that their homes or offices have been shot at since last month. We don't know the name of the suspect, no motive, but police say this individual is being held on unrelated charges. More on that in the days to come. From our Midwest Bureau, Iowa's biggest school district canceled classes today because of a cyber attack. This affected like 33,000 students in Des Moines. The district didn't say whether it was a hack, in other words, whether sensitive information might have been stolen. No word yet on if these kids are going to get back to class tomorrow or not. From our Northeast Bureau, we all know Ben Affleck runs on Dunkin', and today kind of looked like he was running a Dunkin' himself. Yes, that is him, working the drive-thru just outside of Boston. Boston man gives coffee to customers. One customer said he was very funny, very quick-witted. Looking dapper. He was apparently there filming a commercial. So tonight, the Golden Globes will try to claw their way back into your viewing schedule after 2 years of scandals and promises that this time things really will be different. You've got the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which organizes the whole thing. It's had a ton of controversies, including a lack of diversity. Literally, the group had 0 Black members in 2021. There have been reports of bribes for voters, sketchy financials, A sexual misconduct allegation made by Brendan Fraser against the group's former leader, which he says they covered up. The HFPA has acknowledged Fraser's claim, but says the evidence shows the incident should have been taken as a joke. It got to the point where big-time producers, big-time stars, like the people on your screen, threatened to boycott the whole thing, returned awards. Even NBC, which is going to air the show tonight, refused to show last year's ceremony. Clayton Davis is the senior awards editor for Variety and joins us now. So, Clayton, there are some famous people who are supposed to show up tonight. Quentin Tarantino, Billy Porter, Jamie Lee Curtis, for example. Is it going to happen? And walk us through how the Globes are trying to change to get people to actually show up and watch.
Yeah, well, first of all, hi, Hallie. It's great to be here again. Thank you for having me. And when it comes to the Golden Globes, they've made some strides in the right direction. They've diversified their membership. We do have Black members now among their ranks. There's still work to do. And when it comes to the Golden Globes, they've always been an important stop on the award circuit as we reach the Academy Awards as an opportunity for stars to go up there, give speeches, and then secure their nominations or possible wins. So that becomes very valuable to a PR person on, working with their talent and clients. However, there's still work to do. We're not out of the woods yet when it comes to the Golden Globes, and tonight is pretty much a make or break for them.
Because explain that, right? Because could this be the last time that we're seeing the Globes on network TV? And I know you say that it does fit into the broader award show landscape, but the Globes has always been kind of like the fun little sister of the whole thing, right? Like everybody drinks and hangs out and has fun and da-da-da-da.
Yeah, and that hasn't been a bad thing for the Globes as a brand. They were the second most watched award show next to the Oscars, even more than the Grammys. So now as we look at them trying to, clean up their act, so to speak, Brendan Fraser won't be there tonight, obviously with the controversy that you spoke about from the past. He's not going. Tom Cruise isn't expected to be there. He hasn't said outwardly that he wouldn't. He did return his 3 Golden Globes last year, but right now he's also filming the next Mission Impossible movie. So he has a little bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card, even though Top Gun Maverick is nominated for Best Picture Drama.
We were just showing while you were talking, Clayton, some of the numbers here, because it seems like if you take a step back and look at this whole thing writ large, award shows are having a bit of an existential moment here. Typically, you have award shows on Sundays. Tonight is Tuesday. Well, it's because more people want to watch football on NBC on Sunday night, right? That's the logic there. The ratings for these award shows have been going down steadily over the last few years. What can these award shows do, if anything, to get people to watch again in those big numbers? Is it about making sure that movies like Maverick, are front of mind and top of mind here?
When you and I come up with that answer, we're hopefully going to be able to tell them, because no one really knows. The Golden Globes, they couldn't go Sunday because of football, as you mentioned. Next Sunday is the Critics' Choice Awards. All award shows are at this moment. How do you reach this TikTok generation and have them care about the award ceremonies? Is it the movies themselves? Well, Black Panther was nominated a few years ago. That was a pretty decent rating, but still hadn't reached the 50 million, which was the highest Oscar ratings 25 years ago when Titanic had won. They've been chasing that ever since. People are consuming content differently, and people don't know how to reach those demographics. So everyone's willing to try something. Tonight, I don't know if we're going to see the game changer of all award shows. We'll have to see what happens when the Academy Awards happen in March.
Real quick, Clayton, remind us who's hosting?
Tonight, you're going to see Elvis probably reign triumphant, as well as the Banshees of Inisherin, and Michelle Yeoh becoming the second Asian woman to win for Everything Everywhere All at Once in Best Actress Comedy.
Clayton Davis, thank you very much. Great to see you. Appreciate it. That does it for us this hour. We're going to have more for you here tomorrow, of course. Same time, same place. Great to have you with us. Coverage picks up right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.